Hi, I'm Sarah Tyke, host of the Interested Reader podcast. Each week I'll bring you a short lesson in physics or astronomy, followed by a brief overview of what's happening out there in the universe. We'll also merge the wonders of science with the depths of spirit and discuss the metaphysical and spiritual aspects of our universe and ourselves. Come with me as we explore stars and souls, the intersection of science and spirit. Hi everyone. Welcome to the Interested Reader podcast. And today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite scientists, Nikola Tesla. So we're going to talk about electricity, energy, and the mind of a visionary. So today is August 20th, 2025. And so today's number is a 1, which is the same as last time. So I don't know, it just happened to pick the same day, same number. So it kind of made this slide a little bit easy. So if you remember from last time, or just to refresh your memory, in numerology, the number 1 represents independence, confidence, a new beginning, and an innovative and creative spirit. So hopefully that applies to you today, tomorrow, your whole life. And I'll just, every time I'm going through this, how I got the number, for anyone who might be new. So you just take the date, 08/20/2025, you add up all the digits. So that comes up to a 19. And then you add 1 and 9 to get 10. And you add 1 and 0 to get 1. It's called a Pythagorean reduction. I think I did this, an episode about numerology a while back. We were talking about the different types, I think. If I didn't, I meant to. I'm planning on it. I'll have to go back and look. I love numerology. There's a lot to it. I know it gets classified as that pseudoscience or just complete nonsense. But, I don't know. I like it, and it's been something that people have done, throughout all of history. And I think there's something to it, even if we don't want to believe it or we don't know how it works. I just think there's something to numbers. I love numbers and their meanings. I think almost every culture has found some sort of meaning in numbers. Maybe it's just something we assign to it as humans, but I don't know. We do it, and there seems to be something to it, I think. I just love it. And again, 2025, just a number 9, which is the completion or end of a cycle, transition to a new phase, connection to inner wisdom and spirituality. So hopefully this year you're finding those sorts of things in your own life. So first we have our quote of the day, and I actually changed it this time. And it is from Nikola Tesla. And he says, "If you only knew the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe." So here we're combining numerology with science, because obviously I think we all know that Nikola Tesla was a brilliant inventor and scientist, and he was also very much, or seems to be, into numerology. And I'm not even sure what this means. I don't know if there's ever been any explanation as to what he meant by this. But he found much significance to the numbers 3, 6, and 9. So I thought that's kind of interesting. Again, it ties in with my love of numerology and my love of science. And I'd love to see that a lot of times when you start looking into these scientists, they all had some sort of belief in something other than just straight science and numbers. Most of them, at least the ones I like, had some sort of religious backing, even if they didn't classify themselves as such. There was they believed in some sort of a higher power, which was always funny, I thought, because when I'd go in, so my background is in physics and astronomy, and it seems like outside of that community, like everyone thinks that all scientists are just straight up atheists and have no connection to anything higher than, I guess, an equation. And that was never the case for me. Like, all of my friends were spiritual in some way. If it wasn't a straight, defined religion, they believed in something higher. They felt that there was some sort of God, some sort of universal power, some sort of source. Almost without fail, I think I've really only known 1 or 2 that were actual, no, there's just nothing types of people. And nothing against them. Some of them are my best friends. But it was just kind of funny. The perception of scientists that people have is just that we just worship at the altar of the equation and the book. But that's just not true. At least in my experience, all my friends were very religious or spiritual. And so here's Nikola Tesla, seemingly also into numerology. So you're in good company if you love numerology as much as I do. So first, we're going to talk about a little more space news. It's we did August last month, or this last episode. So not much has changed. The Perseids are still going on. You can still look at those. Obviously, I think we talked about the Summer Triangle. That's still out there. But there's a couple cool things that have happened. So there was a white dwarf discovery. TRAPPIST 1D is a small planet that has a discovery found. And then again, the Perseid meteor shower. So first of all, this white dwarf, I didn't get the date of when this actually happened. It's very recently. I think it was probably around the 15th of August, like this month here. So, a few days, a week ago maybe. So it's this white dwarf that's 128 light years away. And if you're watching, the name of it is WD 0525 plus 526. And as far as I know, those numbers are the coordinates of the object. It's typically how astronomical objects get named. So it's 128 light years away, and the Hubble telescope just discovered that there's much more carbon in its atmosphere than they would expect. And this suggests that the white dwarf is actually the result of a collision between two stars, instead of the traditional evolution, how these things come about, which is normally you have a star, kind of a medium-sized star, kind of like our sun, at the end of its life cycle. So it's gone through its main sequence, hydrogen burning phase. It's gone to a red giant. It kind of exploded and blown off all of its outer layers. It's what they call a type 1A supernova. So it gets rid of all of its outer atmosphere, and then just whatever is left is what they call a white dwarf. And that's traditionally how scientists have said that they come about, is through basically the end of a star. But this one, I'm not exactly sure how the carbon signature tells them this. None of the articles I read really went into that much detail. But for whatever reason, this amount of carbon, the astronomers all say that this is likely, that this would indicate that there was a collision of two stars. It's gravitational collision. And that's how this white dwarf came about. So they've never seen this before. So this is the first time. And then, of course, this will now kind of throw into question stellar evolution. And this particular star looked like your ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill white dwarf. There was nothing strange about it, just optically or in any other spectrum that they were studying it. It wasn't until Hubble, looked at it, and they got this reading. So now they're starting to think that maybe all these other white dwarfs that we think are just normal white dwarfs, maybe they're also formed in this weird way of the colliding stars. So it kind of opened up this new area of exploration of, what other ones are out there that maybe this is more common than we think. Maybe this isn't a weird situation. Maybe this is the normal. So it's kind of cool to see these new discoveries that are throwing into question our theories. And I love this stuff. That's why I love the electric universe. Still nobody wants to talk about that. Although I have seen like a year or so ago, it's probably a couple years by now, with the electric universe theory, which is very frustrating to me because I read these articles about the scientists. The headlines are things like, could magnetism play a role in cosmology? Like, oh my gosh, maybe. And this is something that I've been studying since I was in college, so we're talking 20 plus years ago. And it was an old theory then. It wasn't anything new in the early 2000s. But so here we are, just for me, 20 some years I've been studying this, and just now you just read these articles of people like, oh my gosh, there's like this whole new discovery that it could be magnetism. We're onto something, maybe, I don't know, do you think? And it's like, yes, of course it is. It's the electric universe theory. It's not new, and it works. So anyway, so I just love seeing whenever we had these new discoveries that throw into question our traditional view of things, because I think that our traditional view, I mean, it could be wrong. I don't know why everybody's so resistant to admitting that we could be wrong. Like, so what if we're wrong? We have more data. We didn't have anything studying these white dwarfs. So of course, that's like, okay, then that's sort of the natural best explanation we have, is that a star explodes and whatever's left over becomes a white dwarf. Okay, that's fine. You haven't studied every single object in the entire universe. So when you find one that defies that theory, what's wrong with saying, oh, dude, yeah, more data. I guess we found something different. Cool, let's revisit our theory. Or maybe there's just more than one pathway. You know, our first assessment was correct, and this new assessment is also correct. So, I mean, and scientists just don't want to do it. I got so fed up with that world of academia that I didn't want to continue. So anyway, that's my rant. You've probably heard it before if you've listened to me. So here we go. Next one. This is the white dwarf. This was pretty cool. The picture on there was from space.com. Most of the time when you see pictures like this, they're artists' renditions. We don't really get this good of imagery with telescopes. I mean, things could have changed. I don't really keep up with the modern technology. I know that James Webb is the best one we have now. But this is just a picture showing basically two stars kind of gravitationally colliding, and they're going to exchange mass, and I guess with enough mass they'll go supernova and turn into a white dwarf. Alright, so TRAPPIST-1d is an interesting planet. It's in what they call the TRAPPIST system, and I did an episode called something along the lines of Music of the Spheres, and it was about how astronomers will use this thing called sonification to assign musical tones to the bodies of the system that you're looking at. And TRAPPIST-1d, or TRAPPIST system, is considered to be the most musical. So there's 7 rocky planets, and astronomers have always looked at these as being very good candidates for life because they are roughly the same size as Earth. They're the same approximate distance from their star. They've got the same kind of habitable zone where liquid water can form. So they've always looked to this system as a really good place to find life. And in this sonification thing, I can't remember who the guys are that do it. There's one main group or professor that does it. So they'll assign musical tones to the planets, kind of like, I don't know if it's based on their size, but then it's also, I think, based on their rotational period around the star. So if you're going very fast, you get a higher tone. If you're going very slow, you get a lower tone. And so they put it together, and and just watching the movement of this system with music applied, and it's really cool. And I guess I did it. I don't remember the numbers, but it's pretty early on. It's a 2-part series on Music of the Spheres. You can check that out, or just search for TRAPPIST system, TRAPPIST music, something like that, and you'll find it. It's really cool. So TRAPPIST-1d was one of these planets that was thought to be Earth-like and very promising for harboring life. But the James Webb Space Telescope found that TRAPPIST-1d does not have an atmosphere. So no atmosphere, no life. You're not likely to be able to sustain water on the planet, or, obviously an atmosphere for breathing. So the picture here, if you guys are watching, is just a picture from skyandtelescope.org. And so the top half of this picture is the TRAPPIST-1 system, and the bottom picture is our solar system. And so the green part on this picture is the habitable zone. So you can kind of see it extends about the same in both systems. So that's why they kind of figure that these are good candidates. And it looks like probably, so planets E, F, and G are the next ones that will be studied, and those are probably better candidates. TRAPPIST-1d is pretty close to the red part of this non-habitable zone, so it's getting a little too close to the star. But it's right in that border, so they thought, well, it should be pretty good. It's kind of, it's likely, or it could be likely, but it's a little close to the star. If it's closer to the star, that means that there's going to be more heat. The solar wind or stellar wind from its star will likely be stripping off the atmosphere, which seems to be the case with 1D. But E, F, and G planets are more in that green zone, so they'll be studying those next, and they have hope for those too. So maybe we'll still find some sort of life out there, which would be pretty cool. It seems, though, that every time they find a planet, no one has as much water as Earth, it would seem. So it would appear that we, at least from what we've been able to find, that we are unique. Alright, and then again, the Perseid meteors are still going on. They peaked around August 2nd or 13th. I don't know if you guys got out there to see any of them. I was out the other night. I think I saw one faint one, but I can't go out. Usually after midnight's the best time, and I am asleep by then. So I was out at like 9:30, maybe 10 o'clock. So probably, they can happen anytime in the night, anywhere in the sky. It's just that you typically want to be looking after midnight and toward the direction of the constellation. And at this point, Perseus was still a little too low on the horizon. But I think I saw one fairly faint one. And by now the moon, I think, is not... It doesn't seem like it was out when I was out looking at it. I'm not sure what phase it's in right now. Okay, so back to the Perseid. So yeah, so I didn't really get to see any, and I don't... Yeah, it was... I think the constellation was probably a little too close to the horizon, so I'm still getting a lot of that zodiacal light. But I don't know, if you guys saw any, I'd like to hear about it. I love meteors. And this one was supposed to be pretty good. The Perseids are supposed to be one of the best shows, but I'm just not up late enough to see it anymore. So again, if you're going to go out looking, this is about where you want to go. Northeast, closest to midnight as you can. It's going to be a little bit below Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is easy to find because it looks like a W. So when I was out, yeah, Cassiopeia was pretty close to the horizon. So I don't think Perseus was even up yet. So, and again, the meteors can happen anywhere in the sky. You don't have to look in this, right at the constellation. But in general, that's where they're going to be coming from. So it's going to be the best location. But check out the whole sky while you're out there. All right, so now on to the main event. Tesla. Nikola Tesla. So one thing that's always drawn me to him is the fact that he was, I think, looked at as kind of a weirdo. He had a lot of weird, bizarre ideas, but they also all came to fruition for the most part, as far as I could read. And people, he had some sort of connection to the spiritual side. He would often get ideas for his inventions or solutions to his problems in visions. I mean, this is his self-admitted accounts of what happened. Is he would actually have visions of how things were supposed to work, and then he'd be able to do it. And so I've always been fascinated by that sort of, I don't know if I want to say mystical, paranormal aspect of him. So this picture here is interesting if you're watching. And you'll find if you search anything about Nikola Tesla, I find you can't really search about Tesla anymore because you'll get something very different nowadays. So this picture here is his laboratory. I think this is the one in Colorado Springs. But so he's got these huge arcing electricity lightning bolts between two coils. And he's just sitting in a chair, just very calmly, reading his paper, taking notes or whatever. It's a really cool picture, and I love this one. But it turns out that this is actually double exposure. So he was actually fairly creative too, because I believe this was his idea to do this. So there's two different pictures. It's one with the electricity and the sparking and the arcing, and then a second one where all that equipment is turned off and him sitting in the chair, and then he just put the two together. So it looks like he's just very calmly sitting in the middle of this electrical storm. But that was not the case. It was a double exposure. It's still a cool picture, though. I love it. And I love the fact that he put them together. There's kind of, that he's that sort of creative mind. Okay, so we've talked about the nature of light, magnetism. We're talking about Tesla. And eventually, I think next time we're going to get to electricity. I know I've kind of done these things out of order, but once I started researching magnetism, I was like, I gotta talk about Tesla. I love Tesla. But so we'll do electricity at some point, the other half of magnetism. Can't really leave one out. So who was this Nikola Tesla? He was born in what is today called Croatia. He's of Serbian descent. He was born in 1856. And he was supposed to be a clergyman and either go into the priesthood or I think military too was one thing his parents wanted. But the clergy was where he was kind of supposed to go. But apparently he got very seriously ill as a teenager, and his parents, I guess, just kind of let him do whatever he wanted at that point. And so he went into science. And a quote from him is, "From my childhood I had been intended for the clergy. This prospect hung like a dark cloud on my mind." So it was not something that he wanted to do. And after having this very serious illness, he was allowed to basically pursue his own interests. So he comes to America in 1884 when he's 28 years old, and he ends up working for Thomas Edison. And I think, as we all probably know, those two had a bit of a rivalry going. So he solved several of Edison's problems. I don't remember what they were, but Edison was working on whatever, and Tesla said that he could solve them, and he did. And Edison had promised to pay him, to pay Tesla, and I thought I read 50,000 in one article. I thought I read 20,000 in another. But this is like late 1800s, early 1900s. So it would have been, that's a lot of money back then. So he's promised this payment if he solves Edison's problems. Tesla solves the problems, and then Edison claims that the promise of the payment was just a joke. He was just kidding, and he never paid him. But Tesla never took any action, and this seems to happen to him a lot. He seems to run into these situations where he's promised payment or something, never gets it, and then he just never pursues it. Or people are stealing his patents, and he just doesn't seem to care. He's just lets it all go, and I don't know. It seems very naive. Like when you're kind of reading some of these things that happen to him, you're like, was he just that naive that he thought these people were his friends? He just didn't care, I guess. He didn't want to waste his time tracking down money, I suppose. He had about 300 patents worldwide, 112 in the U.S. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Oatmeal. It's a website. I love their stuff. Let me see if this link works. So they have a pretty decent rundown of Tesla. So the Oatmeal, for you guys, like I believe it's one guy that runs the website, but as far as I can tell, the information is all factual. It's just presented in a very funny cartoon manner, and I love the Oatmeal. So theoatmeal.com is the place to go if you want some humor to your facts. So this one is titled "Why Nikola Tesla Was the Greatest Geek Who Ever Lived," and he just kind of goes through. This is a pretty long post, so you'll have to kind of go and read it yourself, but it starts out, "Geeks stay up all night disassembling the world so that they can put it back together with new features. They tinker and fix things that aren't broken. Geeks abandon the world around them because they're busy soldering together a new one. They obsess, and in many cases they suffer." So then he goes on to a little bit about the history of Tesla, discovering alternating current, which we'll get into in a little bit. And then the Oatmeal here, they cover the controversy between Edison and Tesla. So he says Edison simply figured out how to sell the light bulb. So And his quote when this whole thing about Edison not paying him was, "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor." When Edison reneged on his payment. So it's all just, and obviously that's just the oatmeal's take on it. It was just that Edison is saying, "Hey, it was just a joke." But I think I read that he actually did claim that it was a joke. Like he wasn't serious about paying him, and just didn't. And then those two encounter each other, much later, kind of like throughout their careers. So that's theoatmeal.com if you guys want to check out a really cool, like just funny history rundown of Tesla. And they have a lot of other things here, but I've just always loved the oatmeal. So check that out. Okay. So back to our Tesla the inventor. So he invents AC currents, alternating current. And this is in 1887. And this is what sparked what is kind of known as the current wars. Not current as in happening right now, but current as in AC versus DC. And in 1887, he actually invents the radio, but Guglielmo Marconi gets the credit in 1904. And Tesla actually had it patented in 1897. So he had the patent, and Marconi always gets credit for inventing the radio. And about this, Tesla says, "Marconi is a good fellow. Let him continue. He's using 17 of my patents." And another quote from Tesla is, he says, "I don't care that they stole my idea. I care that they don't have any of their own." So I thought that was kind of a neat sort of backhanded compliment or statement there. Like, they're so stupid. They don't have any of their own ideas. That's what I hear about, is that these people are idiots, or at least very non-creative, non-inventive. So I thought that's funny. And then of course there's the Tesla coil, which is a high voltage transformer coil, and this is in 1881 that he's inventing. All these things pretty close together. So we'll take a little side note of what this AC/DC thing is, because AC current is really like one of the most prominent things that we use today. That's what all our houses are powered with. If you plug something into the wall, you're going to be using alternating current, and this was something invented by Nikola Tesla. So AC means alternating current. And if you put a loop of wire in a magnetic field and you rotate the wire, it induces an electric current. And this is kind of what we talked about before, how magnetic fields and electric fields are related. We talked about that in the last episode. So if you move one, you kind of produce another. So you have a magnetic field, you put a wire in it, and then as you move that wire, it induces a current in the wire. And then as the wire rotates, the current or the amplitude changes or alternates. So in this graph is a graph of amplitude versus time. And so for the current goes positive, and then the amplitude goes positive and then positive and negative, and changes back and forth. It kind of flips. And it's this flipping that kind of keeps the power going. So alternating current can be used over long stretches. It doesn't lose its power as quickly as direct current or DC. So transmission lines, the power lines, are, I believe they're using that. So this was a big deal. Alternating current was also thought to be very dangerous, and this is why Edison, he would use the danger of AC to kind of say that Tesla was a crackpot. He's like, you can't use AC, it's too dangerous. You'll never be able to control that much voltage, that much current. So direct current is just what they call a unidirectional or one-directional flow. The amplitude that doesn't change over time. It's just straight. So anything that runs on a battery is a direct current. So your laptops, your phones, anything that's battery powered. A battery provides direct current. And as we all know, they drain pretty fast. Once it starts going, it goes, and then once your chemical reaction, like in your battery, is done, the power's done. But AC current, because of that alternating nature, it just keeps flowing. So this is a picture of the Tesla coil. Just a big coil of wires, and basically energy just kind of arcs or sparks between two coils. And this was the basis for his idea for wireless energy transmission. That was kind of the big thing that he was trying to do, was produce wireless energy. And he really wanted to use the Earth's energy in the atmosphere. He thought you could just pull the energy out of the atmosphere, or pull the electricity, out of the atmosphere, and then power whatever you had to power. Like you were just going to use the Earth as your power source. There was so much energy, he thought, in the atmosphere. And so this Tesla coil was the basis for that idea. And I like the stories about why he got shut down with this, because his idea was that the energy produced by this would be essentially free. So that's where people get this idea of this free energy. Because if you can just pull it out of the air, and I think he said the device that he was thinking of for this to harness the energy, I think he said it would be no bigger than like a watch. So you'd have some sort of small device basically at your house, and that's what would just pull energy out of the atmosphere, and you could just power whatever you wanted with it. There'd be no cables, no power lines, no big energy substations with the transformers that you have to pay the power company for. It would just be some small device that everybody could have, and it would be basically free energy. And well, we'll get into that in a second. But just a few other inventions that he had that were notable. I didn't know that he did the fluorescent and neon lights. In 1893, he invented those. And again, I believe that was something that someone else got credit for, invented it a few years later and got credit, but Tesla does have a patent, I believe, on that. Hydroelectric power, harnessing the water at Niagara Falls. He thought that would be like the greatest source of power, and no one really believed him at the time. They're like, you can't do it. Like, how are you gonna use water to produce power? But he did. I think his concept. He did a proof of concept, and I think the power company out there, I don't remember what they are, but within a few years they were using his hydroelectric power station as a way to, and they actually were harnessing energy from Niagara Falls based on you're using his design a few years after he conceived it. So of course everybody laughs at him, says it's a terrible idea, can't do it, and then a few years later, oh yeah, okay, we're going to use it. Remote control. This was something that he had done so imagine like in 1898, he's got this boat, this little model boat basically on a lake. I don't know how big it was, but it was remote control. So he's sitting there with his little remote control on the shore, controlling this thing. And people are just absolutely astonished, because imagine, by this point, I mean, you're just kind of getting into electricity, but everything's got to have cables or cords. You got to be able to get the power from the source to the object. And here he's doing it wirelessly with remote control in 1898. And I don't know if it was that invention. There was something that he had given to the U.S. Navy, or told them about, like, this would be a great thing, and they just laughed at him. And it turns out that Edison was actually in charge of this department at the Navy. I don't remember what the title was, but so basically he's in charge of kind of deciding what they're going to do, what kind of technology, what kind of things. He's kind of basically the point person, and he just tells everyone that Tesla's just an absolute nut job. We can't trust anything that he's going to come up with. But it was something like this. It was I thought it was like a remote control, for their submarines or whatever, and just got laughed at. And Edison was in charge of it. And he's just like, no, we can't trust him. He's an idiot. He's a nut job. So the Navy never took it on. They never accepted any of Tesla's inventions. Like, I don't remember exactly what it was. So he also comes up with the bladeless turbine in 1909. And in the 1930s, we have teleforce, which is also known as the death ray. So I've heard a lot about this, the Tesla death ray. And supposedly it's a particle beam device. No, it was never built because and everybody after him. The theory of it is that it would be so destructive that you wouldn't actually build it, because it would do so much damage. So this seems to be the precursor for what we call today directed energy devices. And I didn't look into all this. I've heard a lot about it. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Norway spiral that happened a few years ago. Oh, dang. Let me see if I can get this to actually work. Oh, stupid screen. Dang it. You'd think I'd know how to navigate this a little better. Anyway. So a few years ago, well, I guess like in 2008 or 9, there was this thing over Norway called the Norway Spiral, and it was this blue spiral that everyone said was a directed energy weapon. Let's see if I can get this. I guess I put my link too close to the bottom. But so just like out of nowhere, just in the sky, there's a kind of this bluish beam, and then this white spiral just kind of forms in the sky, and it's really cool. But everyone said that it was, here we go, that it was a directed energy device that did this. So this site I'm on is historicmysteries.com. You can just search for Norway Spiral. So this was in 2016, it says. I thought it was earlier than that. Oh yeah, on December 9th, 2009, there was this display. So if you're watching, I'm just going to play this video real quick. Not the whole thing probably, but so if you're watching, there's this white beam that starts from the ground, and it starts spiraling, and everyone thought that it could be a rocket out of control or a missile, but it just kind of turns into the spiral, almost like a cone-looking spiral, like what you would imagine from sci-fi movies is almost like a ray gun. Like if somebody was shooting a ray gun in the cartoons, it's kind of what this looks like. And so you can see it's kind of a bluish beam that goes up to the center of this thing, and this white cloud just keeps spiraling out of it. And it was just fascinating, and there weren't really any good explanations for it. Again, everybody passed it off as a rocket, but I mean, I don't know anything about rockets. I mean, I've seen them launched. I've seen them come back. Like there's pictures and videos of it. I've never actually been, witnessing a rocket launch. I lived in Florida, though. I probably should have tried harder to get down to Cape Canaveral. But this looks like no rocket launch. There's something weird. And then so the white cloud is kind of dissipating here, and then you're left with this blue spiral. This kind of weird conical shaped spiral in the middle. And I don't know if we ever really got an answer of what it was, but people said it was a directed energy weapon, which would have had its foundation basically in Tesla's, what he called the teleforce. So I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I've heard about this death ray thing and I never really knew what it was. But the Norway Spiral was pretty cool. I love that. Okay, so in 1899, Tesla builds a laboratory in Colorado Springs, and this is where he does a lot of work with his Tesla coils, trying to produce his wireless energy. And there's a Tesla coil that's about 49 feet in diameter. I think it was the largest one ever built. And with it, he was able to produce artificial lightning. I believe it caused a lot of issues with neighboring buildings, with power outages and such. And you've got like a lightning storm, 50 feet from your house because some guy's in his garage with his Tesla coils. And this lab was only in use for about a year, and then it was torn down in 1904 to pay debts. And a lot of people said this was the site of a lot of secret experiments. And I think he wanted Colorado Springs because of its altitude. He thought that being up higher would be easier to do, to kind of harness that energy because you're at a higher altitude. So in 1901, he is over in New York builds a tower called Wardenclyffe Tower. I don't know if it's actually the city of Wardenclyffe, if that is a city, or if the name was something else, but it's in New York, and it's called Wardenclyffe Tower. It was built in 1901 to 1905. And so this was kind of a continuation of his Colorado Springs lab and the idea for this wireless energy. Again, this would produce the energy that it was too cheap to charge for. But in 1917, the building still remained unfinished due to financial difficulties, and ultimately it was demolished. And at the time, his financial backer, who was providing him funds for his research, was J.P. Morgan. If you guys are familiar with banking, you know this as J.P. Morgan Chase. And so J.P. Morgan was obviously a very wealthy banker. And the story is that when he heard that Tesla's energy was too cheap to charge for, that's when he pulled the funding. Because where was the return on investment? He was going to be dumping all this money into Tesla to what, get nothing? To make a product that you just give away for free? JP Morgan wasn't going to have that. That's not how you make money. It might be how you help the world, but it's not how you make money. So JP Morgan pulled the funding. And I don't know if that it's true, but that's just what I've always heard and read in some places, that was why he lost his funding, was because he was trying to get free energy distributed to the world. So Tesla, he seems like he's very humanitarian. That seemed to be a lot of his thinking was how it would help the world and how he could bring up humanity with his inventions. I was reading through a lot of quotes from him. There's a site called Goodreads. I believe that's what it's called. And you can just search for authors, or I think just people in general doesn't have to be authors, because they have a lot for Tesla. There's like 7 pages of quotes, and a lot of them seem to deal with wanting to help humanity and wanting to give his inventions to the world because it was going to make life better. But in order to do that, you also need money. So everything is kind of taken down in 1917, and I don't know. I didn't really do much about his end of life. I think he died when he was about 85 or 86. I heard he was also broke. Like he struggled with finances, pretty much his whole life, and was just broke when he died. So that was Tesla the inventor. He was also a visionary and, I believe, a spiritual scientist. So he believed the universe is energy, frequency, and vibration, and his quote is actually, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." So he's kind of along this whole lines of the electric universe theory, and in my opinion, that's what this statement to me sounds like. It's not the physical matter, the sort of Newtonian dynamics of having an object and gravity. He's talking about energy, and vibration is all energy. And I think Einstein had very similar opinions. So he had visions and claimed to receive information in flashes of light. So he would basically just kind of just have essentially like a trance. I think there's this description that I've highlighted here. I'll put these links in the description too. But this one has a very detailed description. The website is teslauniverse.com. And it's from a book called The Miracle Mind of Nikola Tesla by J. Harold Byers. So he's writing a biography about Tesla, and there's an account of when he kind of discovered the AC motor. And so here's a quote from him, from Nikola Tesla. And he says, "During my boyhood, I had suffered from a peculiar affliction due to the appearance of images, which were often accompanied by strong flashes of light. When a word was spoken, the image of the object designated would present itself so vividly to my vision that I could not tell whether what I saw was real or not. Even though I reached out and passed my hand through it, the image would remain fixed in space." So this is Tesla describing things. This is how he actually saw things. And who knows what's actually going on. Some people say that he was talking to demonic entities, that he was having these otherworldly encounters, and that's who was giving him these inspirations. Was some people say demonic. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. Some sort of alien being. So let's see. Sorry, this was such a good description of it. It's in his own words in this book, and I hate to just keep reading to you guys, but so he says that day and night in imagination I went on journeys, saw new places, cities, countries, and all the time I tried hard to make these imaginary things very sharp and clear in my mind. I imagined myself living in countries I had never seen, and I made imaginary friends who were very dear to me and really seemed alive. This I did constantly until I was 17, when my thoughts turned seriously to invention. Then, to my delight, I found I could visualize with the greatest facility. I needed no models, drawings, or experiments. I could picture them all in my mind. By that faculty of visualizing, which I learned in my boyish efforts to rid myself of annoying images, I have evolved what is, I believe, a new method of materializing inventive ideas and conceptions. And I think I have a slide on this coming up, but this whole idea of visualizing is actually something that I've been looking into as well. Some people, I'm going to keep quoting here and keep reading. Some people, the moment they have a device to construct or any piece of work to perform, rush at it without adequate preparation and immediately become engrossed in details instead of the central idea. They may get results, but they sacrifice quality. Here in brief is my own method. After experiencing a desire to invent a particular thing, I may go on for months or years with the idea in the back of my head. Whenever I feel like it, I roam around in my imagination and think about the problem without any deliberate concentration. This is a period of incubation. Then follows a period of direct effort. I choose carefully the possible solutions of the problem I am considering and gradually center my mind on a narrowed field of investigation. Now, when I am deliberately thinking of the problem and in its specific features, I may begin to feel that I am going to get the solution. And the wonderful thing is that if I do feel this way, then I know I have really solved the problem and shall get what I am after. So really, he's just visualizing. He just kind of keeps this mind. He's thinking about it like all the time. I mean, not all the time, but it just kind of sits in his mind, and he thinks about it and just keeps considering how does it happen. It's all in his mind. He's all thinking about this. He's not out, building anything and tearing down and building and doing it. It's all in his head. He's just constantly thinking of it. The feeling is as convincing to me as though I had already solved it. I have come to the conclusion that at this stage the actual solution is in my mind subconsciously, though it may be a long time before I am aware of it consciously. So this is a very good article. I loved how he described this, because again, this is something that I've been kind of studying or trying to implement lately. And I had no idea that Tesla was really into the same sort of thing. I'll tell you guys in a second what I've been doing. So when I was reading this, I was just kind of blown away, because I'm like, that's what I've been reading about. Like, that's what I've been doing, or again, trying to do. I've been reading methods on doing this, and how this technique of visualization and essentially thinking about things is found. Not just Tesla, a lot of very successful people throughout history have done this. But so reading this, I was just like, oh my gosh. So further on in this article is where he describes that he gets the idea for his AC motor. He's out walking in a park with a friend, and he just stops, like he's in a trance. And he's like, I've got it. And he's like, watch me, watch it. Don't you see it? He's talking to his friend, like, don't you see this? It's working. Like, watch me do this. Watch me reverse it. And his friend's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Reverse what? What are you talking about? He's like, don't you see it? Goes on with Tesla. See how smoothly it's running? Now I throw the switch and I reverse it. And he's like, that's it. That's the key, is to reverse it. And his friend has no idea what he's doing. He's like, I don't know what. This guy nuts. And so Tesla's just super excited, because now he's got it. He's got the reversing, the alternating current motor. You have to reverse the current to keep the power going. And he says, I've solved the problem, now I can die happy. But I must live. I must return to work and build the motor so I can give it to the world. No more will men be slaves to hard tasks. My motor will set them free. It will do the work of the world. So again, that was kind of, Tesla's main thought is like, I solved it, finally, I got it, I got this motor, I can't even believe it. And now I'm going to give it to the world to essentially free the world from hard labor and make everyone's life easy. So that was sort of Tesla, the visionary slash spiritual scientist. So this slide here is kind of what I was just reading, how he basically said that his inventions were fully formed in his mind before he ever built them. He would just spend months, years just thinking about them and kind of building this process in his mind. Again, I do not rush into actual work. When I get an idea, I start at once, building it up in my imagination. And there's been this study that I've read with people who are, they have like a broken bone. And so they're in a cast for however long you're in a cast for. I've never broken anything. 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it is. And they'll have them visualize flexing their muscle, lifting weights, getting stronger. They're not actually lifting the weights, obviously, because they're in a cast. They can't do anything, but they're just sitting there and they just visualize themselves getting stronger and doing whatever activity they want. But they're lifting weights, they're running, they're whatever it was. And when the cast comes off, their muscles have not atrophied, and in some cases they've actually gotten stronger. Whereas other people who have the cast and don't visualize anything, their muscles atrophy and they have to really work at physical therapy and rehabilitation when the cast comes off. But it was just visualizing. They're not doing anything else other than just thinking about their muscle getting stronger, and then it actually either has not lost any strength or has actually gotten stronger by the time that cast comes off. And I think I've read something about POWs in World War II. Was it World War II? Maybe it was the Korean War. But so our American soldiers were in a prison camp. And obviously you can't do anything in prison camp, so they would imagine themselves playing golf. And just, that's all they had to do. I mean, what else are you going to do in prison? So they're imagining themselves playing golf, and of course, if you're going to imagine yourself playing golf, you're going to hit every single one. It's going to be a hole in one, right? You're going to play your best game. Everything's going to be a perfect drive, perfect stroke, whatever it is. And when they got out, and when they did play golf, they had actually improved their game by I don't know how many, strokes or whatever. But they hadn't done anything to practice. Obviously, they're in prison. They just visualize it. Like the whole time, they're just thinking about it, and they're just imagining themselves with the perfect game and hole in one after hole in one. And then when they get to a point where they actually are able to play, they have actually physically improved their game, all from visualization. So this is a very long quote from that website we were just at. So teslauniverse.com. You could search for. Well, I don't know how this came up. There's a long web address for it. I'll put all this in the descriptions. So this describes his walk in. He was in Budapest with his friend when he discovers his alternating current. So, yeah. Can't you see it right here in front of me? He says running almost as silently. It's the rotating magnetic field that does it. So again, we've got this idea of this moving magnetic field, and this is what we just described a little bit earlier with that rotating wire. So, and he just came up with it from this vision. I mean, he'd been having this problem. This wasn't like the first time he ever thought of it. It didn't just come to him. He had been working on this problem for a long time. He was like, how can I get this thing to work? How can I get a motor to work, to not lose power like it does with direct current? Something that it's able to move for a long time without dying, without needing a battery. And so he'd been thinking about this for a long time. This is when it came to him, kind of in this vision. So this is the side note that I wanted to mention here, is that this is very much, this sort of visualization technique is what's described in a book called Think and Grow Rich. And it was written in 1937 by a man named Napoleon Hill. And in this book, I think he was like in his 20s or something, and he was working for Andrew Carnegie. So if you guys have ever heard of the Carnegie Mellon Institute, they're very big into robotics. That's the namesake here. Is Andrew. Well, I don't know if it's Andrew Carnegie, but it's his line. I don't know if his grandsons or what. But so Andrew Carnegie is a very famous. I believe he was. I'm going to get the nationality wrong. I thought he was a Scottish businessman, but here in the States, very wealthy, very rich. And so Napoleon Hill is working for him, asking him basically like, how did you become rich? How do you do it? And Carnegie tells him that basically he will fund his basically journey to answer this question if Napoleon Hill is willing to basically dedicate essentially the rest of his life to learning it. And Napoleon Hill is like, okay. So it's a 25-year journey to write this book that gets published in 1937. And over the course of these 25 years, he is meeting like the wealthiest at the time. I mean, the wealthiest people in the world, basically at that time. People who own, the steel companies and the bankers, and just learning from them how did you get the wealth? How did you get this money? And a lot of it came down to essentially having an idea, visualizing yourself being successful at it, and basically just going at it. You have a goal and you think about it all the time. And I haven't actually finished the book yet. I don't have time to sit down and read, so I've actually, I've just now found it as an audiobook. So I'm listening to that a little bit here and there. But I've known the thrust of this book for a long time. I've heard about it, and finally I decided to actually get it and read it or listen to it. But so it's the same sort of idea of just visualizing. And another one that I very much like is Earl Nightingale. He has a thing called The Strangest Secret. And the main thrust of this is this quote that I love. We become what we think about. So in The Strangest Secret, Earl Nightingale is going through all the different famous, creative, inventive people in the world. And how basically it's this idea that we think about, like whatever we become, we think about. We become what we think about. And it goes back to, essentially ancient times. Even in the Bible, Jesus tells the people, his disciples, that if you have faith as a mustard seed, you can tell this mountain move from here to there and it will move. But the key is always you have to have faith. You have to believe. You can't just, think, oh, I'm just going to get $1 million today. Because you probably don't actually believe that. Maybe you do, but I think that happens a lot of times when we have these like really big things. We're like, I don't know if I really believe that. So there's this little doubt in your mind that kind of takes over everything. But these two books, especially The Strangest Secret, because it's a 30-minute clip. You can find it anywhere on YouTube. And I love it because he just kind of lays out what people have known forever in a very concise manner. And then he talks about a 30-day test that you can do to kind of prove to yourself that it works. But one of the key things is that you can't doubt yourself. You have to have a single specific goal, and you think about it every day, and you imagine yourself already attaining that goal. So you imagine yourself with the house, the car, the money, whatever it is. And you keep that image in your mind all the time because we become what we think about. So if you're thinking about this goal with essentially all your mind, you can't not become it because you essentially end up making the circumstances and drawing the resources or whatever it is to you. If that's all you're thinking about, the key is that you can't have any doubt. You can't also then be thinking about other ways that you're going to fail or some other contradictory goal. I often struggle with this because it all sounds really good, but I think there's always some doubt in the back of my mind, like, can I really do it? Is that really possible? And that right there, your mind likes to latch onto that because it's very easy to see negativity in the world. So it's not necessarily an easy process, this 30-day test that Earl Nightingale talks about, but it's definitely something I'm still working at trying. I did it a couple years ago, maybe a year or two, probably about 2 years ago. So there was a guy named Dan Miller who passed away, I think, in 2023. And that's where I first heard about this, The Strangest Secret, because he had basically a 48-day test. His website is 48days.com. 6:30, no problem. And with my husband, it's closer to like 8. But anyway, so I'm going to try just to wrap this up quick because I don't want to have to come back later in the day because I probably won't do it. So I really recommend that you guys check out The Strangest Secret, again, because that's just like you can find anywhere on YouTube. It's about 30 minutes. It just has some really cool stuff in it. And then if you're interested in the book, I was able to get Think and Grow Rich as a free audiobook. It just happened to come up as free one day. But I was able to find a free audiobook of it online. I don't remember where. But those two things are really cool. And again, it's all about this just visualization, and it's not just this like nonsensical pseudoscience that everybody likes to think of it as. A lot of very successful people have used it, and Nikola Tesla being one of them. So those two things, I just, side note, would highly recommend these things. So as far as inspiration, so Tesla believed that his ideas were coming from an infinite reservoir of knowledge, kind of like tuning into a cosmic frequency. And he always described these moments of sudden illumination where you have this flash of light, of vision, and he was always inspired by nature. He studied lightning, magnetism, resonance. Really, was inspired, I think, by Niagara Falls and the water, the power behind water, and harnessing that for hydroelectric power. So again, another quote: "I do not rush into actual work. When I get an idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination." So again, it's visualization, it's imagining, it's thinking about something all the time, because we become what we think about. So as a spiritual scientist, because it was kind of hard for me to pinpoint whether or not he was religious. So he says, what one man calls God, another calls the laws of physics, which I've always agreed with. I probably phrased it more the other way in my life, because oddly, the people I've met who are more atheist are the biologists and not the physicists. But I've always just thought, well, somebody may call it science, but I call it God. So then he goes on to say, my brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. The gift of mental power comes from God, divine being, and if we concentrate our minds on that truth, we become in tune with this great power. My mother had taught me to seek all truth in the Bible. So these kind of indicate that he did believe in some sort of higher power, tapping into the power of the universe, from God, divine being. Again, concentrating your mind, and then you get this, you become in tune with this universal frequency, this God power. But then he'll say things like, the human being is a self-propelled automaton entirely under the control of external influences. He is like a float tossed about by the waves of a turbulent sea. So I'm kind of like, oh, maybe that kind of seems like maybe you're thinking that we're not anything other than just, well, he says, self-propelled automaton. Which kind of makes me think like, oh, maybe he doesn't believe that there's a God. But I don't know. That quote just sort of made me think like, oh, that seems kind of non-spiritual? I don't know. And then also he says, science is opposed to theological dogmas because science is founded on fact. To me, the universe is simply a great machine which never came into being and will never end. Man, like the universe, is a machine. What we call soul or spirit is nothing more than the sum of the functionings of the body. When this functioning ceases, the soul or spirit ceases likewise. And so again, I read that and I'm like, oh, here he was just talking about God and divine being and getting this information and this inspiration from the universe. And then he's like, nope, it's all just a machine. We're just machines. Just the functionings of our body, that's all we are. I'm like, oh. But he does say we have a soul. But he does say that soul is nothing more than some of the functionings of the body, which I totally disagree with. So astounding are the facts that in this connection, that it would seem as though the Creator himself had electrically designed this planet. So again, we're talking about a Creator. Electrically designed the planet, electric universe. All perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon by the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. So again, we have this idea that there is this universal creative force, I don't know. So it's kind of, I don't know what he was. And this is just from me reading all these various quotes from him. I haven't actually read, I don't know if he did any autobiographies, but I don't know. I mean, it could be both. Humans are very complex beings. He could hold both views. If you're just not sure, you're like, I don't know, maybe we're just machines, maybe we're not, maybe there's a God, maybe there isn't. Who knows? I mean, you don't have to be one or the other. So maybe he had just a little bit of everything. So I just thought those were very interesting quotes. Just things that caught my attention about him. So just kind of recapping here. So we've talked about magnetism now. This is invisible force. The AC motor relied on a rotating magnetic field. He was also trying to harness the invisible, these electric fields, these magnetic fields, and obviously with his Tesla coils was producing energy, electricity. So again, this all to me kind of comes back to the electric universe. Electricity, magnetism. Everybody knows it. Or all the great inventors. But this is the thing, though. Everyone thought that Tesla was a crackpot. Nobody wanted to invest in him or believe in him. And years later, all of his stuff would come to fruition. I mean, obviously the AC motor turned out to be viable. The neon lights, the hydroelectric power, and there's a whole list. I mean, like I said, he's got several hundred patents. But everybody at the time just laughed at him, so he was very much ahead of his time. So just because, you have a belief or an idea that people scoff at and laugh at and say, nah, there's no way, don't give up on it, because you might just be ahead of your time. And that's what I thought with that electric universe thing. When I found that, I fell in love with the electric universe. It made so much sense to me. But nobody wants to talk about it in academia. Oh, until recently, where they're thinking, well, maybe we can kind of start to think about considering the possibility that there's a chance that maybe electricity and magnetism play a part in a universe where everything is electricity and plasma. I don't know, maybe we'll consider it. So anyway, again, my rant. You're going to hear that a lot if you keep listening. So just a few questions, kind of, because I love journaling and just thinking about these types of questions. So what ideas or intuitions have I dismissed because they seem too out there? Like Tesla had some really out there, crazy ideas, but he didn't just dismiss them. He just, kept thinking on them, and then turned out to be, the greatest inventor, giving us some of the best inventions of all time. Where in my life am I being asked to think bigger or tune in more deeply? What's one impossible idea I've secretly dreamed about but never shared? And what would you do if that idea were a reality? Like if you didn't have to worry, or if you didn't worry about what people thought, about whether or not this is impossible, can never happen. What if it wasn't? What if you just did it? What if that idea you could just materialize like Tesla did? You just visualized it and there it was. What would you do? Like, how would that change your life? And what is it? What would you materialize? And these are questions I've been thinking about for a long time for myself, because this comes up a lot when I'm looking at when you start like the self-help sort of thing and just various personal development areas. These types of questions come up quite a bit, because a lot of times we do think that our ideas are, oh, they're too weird. People are going to laugh at me. No one's going to believe me. No one's going to take me seriously. So we get stuck thinking about that, and then we just kind of shove everything off the side. I guess I'll just go and punch a time clock like everybody else. And that comes up in The Strangest Secret, where I don't know who it was. A lot of The Strangest Secret is Earl Nightingale kind of bringing up other people's works. So you'll hear a lot of that. And I don't know who it was, but they say that the problem, or the opposite of courage, isn't cowardice, it's conformity. People just conform to doing what they're quote unquote supposed to do without really thinking about why they're doing it. So his example is, why do people go to work? Well, because everybody else does. Because I'm supposed to. Well, why? That's all? That's the only reason you're doing it, is because someone else is doing it? The idea behind The Strangest Secret here, and I think is 100% correct, do it because that's what you want to do. I mean, my husband loves his job. We work at the same company. I hate my job. And right there's the problem. You hear how I use the language, I hate my job. So of course in my head, that thought's going to keep getting propagated. And I got to change it. And that's what I'm trying to change. But my husband loves it. He has no problem going in and working for somebody else. He loves what he does. And I don't. I don't like what I'm doing. So why am I doing it? Well, because, I need the paycheck. And it's just that whole kind of that conformity thing. You kind of end up getting trapped, though. In this idea, well, I got to have the money. I got to do what everybody else does. Because what is my impossible idea would be like quitting my job and doing podcasting full time. Or I've got this other like part-time work from home thing. Yeah, I would just quit my decent paying job with benefits to do this stuff on my own. Do my own podcast. Okay, that seems like that's the impossible idea. And so that seems impossible. So I'm like, well, I guess I can't. So I'm just going to get that time clock. I'm going to get that paycheck. But, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And Dan Miller's thing was always, you don't have to quit your job. Like, in fact, if it's going to cause financial hardship or struggles in your marriage or your relationships, don't quit your job. Use that as essentially your seed capital. So, because his thing was that with 15 hours a week, you can start to build a side business, or at least a proof of concept. You're not going to just become you're a millionaire overnight or anything, but with just 15 hours a week, you can at least prove to yourself that your idea, whatever it is you want to do for your job, is viable. And you can get it working, so you can kind of show your family and friends, like, look, with 15 hours, I'm starting to build this business. I'm getting clients. I'm getting outreach. I'm making some money. If I had more time, I could do this full time. I can scale it. So his thing was always, no, don't quit your job. That's a lot of stress, especially if you're in a marriage or you're responsible for somebody else. You probably need your steady paycheck, and that's fine. But don't give up on your dreams. You can still work it in there. It just is going to be on a smaller scale to start. So if you want to check out Dan Miller's work, 48days.com. And again, he passed away, but his daughter runs that site now. And I found out about Dan Miller from listening to his son's podcast, Kevin Miller. He does a lot of this, the self-help and personal development stuff, and I love him. I love Dan Miller. He was so awesome. But yeah, so check out 48days.com for more of his stuff. And they've got a lot of free resources there, just for ideas on building businesses, basically. And he was just really cool. And he was always very inspirational, very positive, very much. A lot of people would send him letters and be like, well, I'm too old to start a business, or I've wasted too much time. I can't. And he's like, no, you're never too old. And you can always do something. So and he always, give some idea, like, well, why don't you start doing this? And he's got a book that's basically full of all these ideas of people just kind of, I don't know if I can, but I guess I'm just going to start with this one thing. And then that one thing turns into a business. So it's awesome. But so just kind of keep these things in mind, that a lot of times we have ideas that we think are impossible or out there, but just know that a lot of very successful people have come before you who thought that their ideas, or were told that their ideas were impossible. That was the difference, is that they didn't think they were. They knew that they could do whatever their idea was, regardless of what anybody was saying. Maybe not overnight, maybe not instantaneously, but you keep that idea in your mind and you become what you think about. So you just keep at it. You just, if nothing else, you just keep thinking about, like Tesla did. He wasn't building iterations of these motors, apparently, over and over years and years and decades. He was just thinking about it. He had this concept, this idea, this problem in his mind that he had to solve. He just kept thinking about it in his mind until the actual fully formed motor just appeared to him in a vision. It's like, there it is, got it, now I can go build it. So just don't doubting yourself that's the big thing. Don't do it. I'm working on it. I'm trying. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I hear some happenings down the hall, so I'm going to have to go figure out what's going on down there. And again, some sky watching resources. I always like, these are my 3 favorites. Sky and Telescope, space.com, and spaceweather.com. And you can follow The Interested Reader. That is me, Sarah, in all the usual places. You can email me, Sarah at theinterestedreader.com. We've got a Facebook group. I'm on Instagram. I think, never mind. Instagram, YouTube. Got the website. The website, you can sign up for a newsletter. It's usually a 4-part newsletter. I talk about the electric universe. There'll be a little bite about physics, astronomy, and spirituality. So if you guys want to know if there's anything you want to hear about in a newsletter, any topics you want me to cover, let me know. Email, comment on the Facebook page. Wherever you want to get a hold of me, let me know if you want to talk about anything, and I will do my best to get it up and going. Alright guys, thanks for listening. I often tell myself I'm glad that no one's listening, because I'm not sure that I could listen to myself. That was the other thing, I guess. If you guys have any ideas if this is too long of a format, I think this one's going to be about an hour-ish, maybe even longer. Is that too long? Do you like listening to something that long? I do, personally. I love the podcasts I listen to. I could listen to them forever. So when an hour's up and they're like, we have to go, I'm like, no, I want more. But I also know that there's a lot of people that don't want to sit for an hour or listen for an hour. You just want 15, 20 minutes or 5 minutes. And I would love to know this if you guys want a certain time length, and I'll try to tone it down. But yeah, so I'm often thinking like, hey, I'm glad that no one's listening. But I've noticed on the YouTube channel that I get like 10 views on on the channel, and I think there's a couple subscribers. So I know there's at least a few of you out there, and I thank you, and I really appreciate you guys. If you've subscribed, I love it. Thank you. If you're watching, I don't know if people are watching the entire video. If you watch for 5 minutes and if that counts as a view, I don't know. I don't follow metrics. I probably should, but I don't. But yeah, if you've subscribed, I love it. Thank you. If you haven't, I would love it if you did, but obviously it's up to you. But yeah, if you're listening, if you're watching, thank you. I appreciate it. You're the reason I'm doing this. It's just so I have, at least I know that maybe there's somebody out there I'm talking to, and it's not just to the ether. Even if it was, I would still be doing it. So, but I love that you guys are out there. Thank you. Please let me know if you need anything. All right. I will talk to you guys later. Thank you. Love you. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode and are inspired to question and investigate the world around you. Let me know what you're thinking about. You can contact me through the website, theinterestedreader.com, send me an email at sarah@theinterestedreader.com, or join the Interested Reader group on Facebook.
I'll see you at some later time t, where t is greater than t naught, and t naught is equal to now. Thanks for being an interested reader, and I'll see you next time.